Okay, missions class, second to the last one. Actually, this is the last one we're going to record. Today is May 11th. Here we go. Today we're talking about a missionary or cross-culture worker life timeline. So, timeline for a missionary. You ready to jump in?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good answer. How come I only got one answer? All right. Let me pray first. Lord, pray you bless this time. Help us to focus. I know we could be struggling with spring fever and wanting everything to start winding down. But yet, Lord, I pray you bless this time. I pray that we'd be able to be focused, be able to glean from this information. I think it's really important just of how can we come alongside those that want to go on the mission field, or how would we even tackle this idea if we decided to go, one of us here in this room, which would nothing make me happier if someone here said, yes, I want to go on the mission field. But yet, Lord, I pray that we would know how to actually go about it, how to send someone out, how to prepare them, how would they actually prepare themselves. And so, Lord, I pray that you would open our eyes, open our ears, we'd be able to hear and see what you would have for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, I think this is really important. I decided not to make this mandatory reading, but there's another book called Serving as Senders by Neil Perello, Serving as Senders. If you are interested in actually going on the mission field, or you yourself are involved with sending someone on the mission field, it's a must read. You need to have this book. It's called Serving as Senders, Neil Perello, P-I-R-O-L-O. Okay, so in his book, he basically talks about how you need a team. You need a lifeline in order to be a missionary. Now, I think this is not a new topic. We've talked about this when you go out. Basically, the idea is that your team helps you get on the field, but not just get on the field, to stay on the field, and also brings accountability and support and care that you need. For instance, the example a lot of people use is you have a deep sea diver that's connected to a hose is connected to a boat above the water. So you're way down there, say 300 feet. Hey, you're exploring stuff or digging up stuff or looking for gold or whatever. Have you ever seen the show where the guy is like, I forget what it's called, hunting for gold in the ocean. And they have these big tubes and they suck up a lot of the ground. They're hoping to find some gold nuggets and whatever, and it gets sent up to the ship. There it is. Good job. Okay, so look. That diver's life is dependent upon that tube and that boat doing its job. If, say, someone accidentally isn't paying attention, drinking their coffee, and steps on that hose that brings oxygen to the diver, what's going to happen? They're like, oh, sorry, I was standing on this hose for a couple of minutes. Oops. Sorry, Cameron. Maybe better send someone down there, go get him. Right? So his life is dependent on that line continue to work. That's where his communication is also. And then also, you have his obviously recycled air going back up. That needs to be working right. If the machine isn't able to process the air right, say something happens in the machine, like say the machine breaks down or runs out of oil or something like that, that could be disaster for the diver. The idea is that in the same way for a missionary, their support team is their lifeline. You need to have a team that comes around you, that helps you, that encourages you, not just support. We tend to think, okay, you want to go on the mission field? Okay, you need to find some donors and do some fundraising and rally some people that are going to financially support you. That's one piece of the puzzle, but there's also just a logistics team. You have your prayer support team. You have your communication team. So you have those that are involved that kind of head up different areas and staying in touch with you, bringing accountability, bringing support, encouragement, and all that. Not just money and not just prayer, even though prayer is huge. But usually those other ones get neglected. Prayer gets neglected. But missionaries on the field, I've actually talked to missionaries say, Troy, if I could choose between your church praying for us and giving us money, and I could only have one or the other, I would choose prayer. Which is a little shocking, right? Because you think, I can't do this without money. But most of them I've talked to, they also realize we can't do this without having partners with us, praying for us, that God would do a work and have support that way. So, here's the timeline. I think it's really important for you to have a good grasp of this. In times past, my other classes have actually done like a final that you actually have to fill in answers and all that, and a lot of that would actually be on here. But I decided to do something a little different this time, so you aren't going to have that same kind of test. But look, I think this can even play into what you present next week, because I think it's really important of how to support, one of those questions, if not two of them, that you could answer has a lot to do with caring for a missionary. Okay, so this is the lifeline for what we call a cross-cultural worker, just another term for missions. I think it's a fine term. I don't know if it totally encapsulates everything I'd want, but as we talked about, the word missions, missionary, is either a term that's been overused or misunderstood or isn't even used appropriately. And so I understand why people would choose different terms, So just know cross-cultural worker is just another term for missionary. Okay, so you have the personal call from God, meaning, look, you feel like God has stirred something up. You're just going about life, you're seeking the Lord, you never really even had thought of missions necessarily. Not to say that your life was flat, it's not like, oh, now that you're talking about missions, now life gets interesting, now your life, starts going upward. That's not what it's saying at all. Really, just saying, look, you could have this great walk with the Lord, be serving the Lord in other areas, but this is just in regard to missions. So you could say you have your normal ups and downs, just like the rest of us have, but now mission starts to take place in your heart, takes place in your life. Okay, if you notice with a lot of the missionary biographies that usually something sparked it, a message they heard, they read something, they were at a class or some speaking engagement, and something kind of sparked something in them. And they're like, wow, I never thought about this before. And God uses that to stir them up. And so I would hope that, we would stir that up. If you're called to go on the mission field, there'd be something here that would kind of stir you up. Maybe it's a class like this. I've always thought, and this is actually something that Guzik has shared when we started the Bible College, is that our goal is to ruin you for normal life. That you just wouldn't be content just to go back to the normal life. It doesn't mean necessarily end up on the mission field, but that you just wouldn't be okay going back kind of the normal routine of maybe what most would call the Christian life. That you'd be ruined for that. Hey, you wouldn't be content with that. Okay, so it gets interrupted. You get a call from God right there, between A and B. There's something that stirs up, and you're like, hey, you know what? I need to look into this. I need to check this out more. Okay, so what do? Well, that's where you get others involved. Others confirm the call. And so you can see there in B is anticipation of approval. Oh, I didn't get that. Okay, A is normal life. Got that? So A is normal life. Then you have the personal call of God that interrupts that normal life. Then you have anticipation of approval. The idea there is that others are involved. You brought this up to others, particularly your church leadership or maybe some mission organization, and you said, hey, look, I feel called to be involved with missions, to go on the mission field. And you go through some kind of process. During that process, you really kind of challenge, you might be stretched. You emerge from your prayer closet and you're like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so, everyone get this? Anticipation of approval. So during that time, the call is confirmed. The church says, hey, look, we like this idea. Cameron, we think this is a good idea for you to be involved more in missions. Not saying that it's easy. A lot of times, anyone that's in this position wrestles through being inadequate or feeling inadequate. I'm not called to this. I don't know if I have what it takes. I think I do. I have an interest, but I don't know if I have the right gifting. You think of Moses. What was Moses' response when God fingers him and says, I want you to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt? Did Moses say, right on, I'm ready, bring it on? Is that what he said?
No.
What did he do?
He said someone else.
Yeah, he said someone. Yeah, not me. What else did he say?
I'm not eloquent.
Yeah, I can't speak right. Someone think he has some kind of speech impediment. He just couldn't spit out the words. He's like, really, you want me to be the guy to go talk to Pharaoh? I can't even talk right. And what is God's response to him?
I made man's mouth.
I made man's mouth. I will be with your mouth. I will be with you. That was his answer. His answer wasn't, I'll fix everything. His answer was, I'll be with you. Moses, I'll be with you. So he didn't take Moses' response and say, oh, it's a little hard for you. You feel inadequate? Okay, then you don't have to do it. Is that what God said? No, he said, I'll be with you, Moses. Look, we can do this together, but I want to use you. And so we all wrestle through feeling inadequate. We can kind of do the who me, I'm not good enough kind of deal. That's normal. We think we're weird or unusual kind of going through that. That's normal. Then as we start kind of moving forward, you feel like, no, God's confirming it. Other people are confirming it. Often when there's a call in someone's life, I look for confirmation outside of just one area. I look for others to confirm, others see it, others put their stamp on it. You see circumstance start to come together. Okay, so there's kind of now this rise of excitement and hey, look, we can do this. You know, I feel like God has called me to do this. But there's also probably a rise in some apprehension. There's also some anxiety that kind of goes with it. Okay, so then you move into the next area, which would be pre-field preparation. Okay, so the church is saying, okay, we're with you. Let's move forward in this process. Let's prepare you. Let's get some real training. Let's look into the cultural situation over there. Let's look into logistical situation. Let's talk about finances. There's a lot to go through. Even in our church, if you want to take on missions, there's an application process that would really start it, that would set everything really into motion. Then there are several steps. We have required reading that we'd want you to do, which you've already done some of the required reading, because I actually would require missionaries to read a lot of what you read, actually pretty much the same list, and then some other stuff as well, including this book. And also, we would kind of do some background looking into, look at a certain place, talk to the individual about certain areas, bless you, certain areas of strengths and weaknesses, talk through trouble areas that missionaries run into on the field. So there's a lot involved right there, but that area would be pre-field preparation, like you're preparing to go on the mission field, right? What I want you to notice, look at this. What do you see going on in C? Is it a straight line? Is it just like all great at this point and accelerating? There's a little turbulence. Why? Why is there turbulence?
Because there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah. There's a lot of unknowns. You don't know exactly what you're getting into. And also, we have expectations. Stinking expectations can thwart us. Here's why. Because in your mind, you think, I'm out of here in 6 months. I have never seen someone say, I'm going to go, and then they actually go at this point. Usually, it takes longer. In fact, there's always I've never seen it be a straight line between what we think we'll be doing and what we actually end up doing. And usually, there's some curves that kind of take place. I think those curves are for our good. They grow us, they refine us, they kind of weed out either pride or self-reliance. Maybe I just needed to slow the thing down so I actually get the kind of the equipping I needed. Maybe I get the resources lined up. I've seen missionaries jump the gun and try to go early, and maybe they don't have all the funding they need. So when they get there, they can't really live in the area where the people they want to reach. They have to live 40 minutes away and take a bus in. Well, that hinders your ministry. That doesn't make you as effective because now you have to commute in because you can't afford to live in that area. But if you waited maybe 3 more months to get the proper funding, then maybe you could be living there. It's all tied together. You think finances is just a finance issue, but finances impact how you do ministry. It just does. They're tied together. They're at the hip. And so there can be a lot of things. Or if you're stressed out about money the whole time, you're going to be distracted from being able to do the job you're called to do, right? It just makes sense. And so we purposely have had to slow down missionaries in this process, or you could say pre-missionaries. We've had to slow down the process sometimes because maybe certain things weren't sorted out. Or one time, a husband and wife wanted to go to Costa Rica. The wife had never been out of the country, not even Mexico. So they're like, we're moving, we're going. And I remember me and the pastor at the time were meeting with them. And, they weren't our missionaries. They're just looking for support and funding and really us be on board with them. And we're like, well, I think you guys should scout this out. And it seems very soon. I don't think you've kind of thought about some of these things. And you know what the response was? Particularly his response, the husband's response was, well, I have faith to go. Almost like kind of saying, you guys might not have faith I can do this, and God can do this, but I have faith, and kind of like made us feel like, oh, we don't have faith, and then we're like, Oh, well, we do still think you need to sort this out. And you know what? I still don't think it's good that your wife has never been out of the country and you're going to blindly go take her to Costa Rica. He ignored us. He didn't slow down the ship. They went. She missed her dog. They left their dog back home in the States. She went back to go visit the dog because the dog was sick. She goes back home and then sends an email to her husband basically saying, I'm not coming back to Costa Rica. Total disaster. And that's not totally unheard of to have situations like that where if you just slowed this whole thing down, obviously she wasn't ready to really go and you weren't willing to kind of be sensitive to your wife's needs in this area because it should be a joint venture, not just yours. So if we slowed him down more and made it a little more jig-jag like this, maybe we would prohibit this, because that's what we're going to talk about next. So this process of slowing it down can be for good. No one likes to be slowed down. Let's be honest. You know, we have our date, we want to go, and the idea of kind of pushing that date back is never fun. Sometimes just logistics. Sometimes there's safety issues. Who knows? But I've always found that during that time, you look back on it, it's really for good. And they're probably better missionaries because of it. Does that make sense? Okay. So during that time, before the departure date, it gives you time really to troubleshoot. I see that as like troubleshooting time is, hey, work out as much as you can on the front end because look, it's not going to get any easier once you get there. It's just going to be harder to deal with stuff. You have marriage issues now, man, it's going to be magnified on the mission field. Deal with that stuff now. You have issues with your children now, deal with that now before you take them out on the mission field. You have financial issues now, you know, you get the point. Work that stuff in now. It's a lot easier to work that stuff out here in America where you have support, you understand the culture, you understand the way the game is played. Deal with stuff here. Don't just take it with the problems with you on the mission field. Because you know what? When you get on the mission field, you're going to have whole new problems, right? Just by being on the mission field, there are going to be cultural misunderstandings. There's going to be issues. There's going to be things that are just going to pop up that you will not be able to predict. They will be there. So why bring some preloaded issues when you're going to catch some new ones when you get there anyways, right? So work out as much as possible. That's part of our job, I think, here with the missions process is that we just want to work. It's your best interest that we work through these as much as possible. I'm not saying we're sending you, wait until everything's perfect before you go, because obviously there's no such thing. But there's certain glaring things that, others can see better than we can see. I call this the blind spot. In your car, have you ever been driving and you start to like move over a lane and you're like, oh, whoa, oh man, I didn't know a car was there, right? And it was in your blind spot. You didn't see it. The whole point of the blind spot spiritually is that you don't see it. And you're like, well, I didn't know it was there. Well, that's the whole point of it. You can't see it. But everyone else driving around you, they see the car, right? To them, it's like, duh, there's a blue car right next to you. And you're like, I didn't know it was there. And they're like, well, I told you about the blue car. Wow, I didn't see it. So that takes faith. So Cameron's driving. He doesn't see the blue car. I'm in the back seat. I look over. I see the blue car. Now he has a choice. Do I believe Troy, or do I believe that my perception, my angle, I can't see it? And do I go with my view, my angle, or do I trust the guy in the back seat that can see it clearly? Right? Because that takes faith to trust me because you don't see it. The whole point is you don't see it, so you have to take me at my word that I see something you don't. That takes trust, and you're really kind of trusting those that you're going through the process with. If you don't trust those you're going through the process with, then you're not going to likely maybe receive input people have in your blind spots. Because you know what? We all have spiritual blind spots. I have spiritual blind spots. Each one of us has spiritual blind spots. Let's work those out, or at least bring some attention to them. I'm hoping at this season of my life that I have some awareness of my blind spots. But by definition, I'm sure I have some that I'm totally clueless about. But I think some I'm more aware of, that I take on faith that others are pointing out to me, and hopefully commit those to the Lord. Okay, then what happens? You leave. You have your departure date. Okay, you hit the ground running. You actually get on the plane. You pack everything up. You turn off your gas and your water and your trash, and you pack up your dog. Your dog gets all the shots and everything to take with you on your journey, and You sign up, get your kids enrolled in a school over wherever you're going, and you've worked all that out. You get there. You get there and you are stoked. You're like, we're finally here. We've been praying for this for like 2 years. We've been raising money. We're here. I call this the honeymoon phase. It's great. Emotions are all-time high. It's like you're in a productive bubble, nothing can get to you. You think this is great. Even the quaint, weird things are seen as something really kind of fun and new. It's a big adventure. Oh, it's cold water. Oh, that's part of the adventure. It's cold showers, The food is kind of weird and different. Oh, that's all part of the adventure. That's all part of the deal. Okay, the language is different. Oh, it's all part of the deal. Oh, I don't even know how to greet people. Oh, that's all, the clothes are different and they want me to wear something. I have to be covered up from like here down to my toes. Oh, that's all part of the experience. So we take it all as like part of the cultural, adjustment. Okay, isn't this neat? Even things that later, we're like, oh, like big weird bugs. You're like, oh yeah, we don't have bugs like this in Santa Barbara. Look at the camera, look at this bug, We see it all part of the experience. But it all comes to an end. Just how all that is all part of the great adventure. That quickly comes to the end. There's always an end to the honeymoon. And then reality sets in, and you're like, oh, I'm kind of tired of the cold shower. I'm kind of tired of not understanding the language and being able to order at McDonald's. And I thought I ordered this at the restaurant. I ended up getting, fried guinea pig, and that's not what I wanted. And, the fun kind of ends. So there's always this end to the honeymoon phase. And so right here, you have the honeymoon phase. Then you have reality sets in. This is hard. Man, I didn't know, this is what I was getting into. There's obviously going to be some unknowns when you get over there because none of us has actually lived in that particular situation. We can give you a good idea, you can do research, but you know what? No Google research will prepare you totally for where you go. It just won't. You can be as informed as you want, but you still have to live it. You still have to wake up each day and you hear the roosters out loud or whatever. You kind of have to just live it out and deal with it. So this, E, is critical. So this is, if you catch nothing else, I want you to really focus in on this one. This is what we call cultural stress. You're transitioning from one culture, particularly American culture. You can't get too much more different than American culture pretty much to any other culture in the world. Now there's some similarities also, obviously with other Western cultures like Canada or Europe, but even there is definitely some cultural differences that surprise me. The longer I stay at a place, even a Western type place, there's some pretty radical cultural differences. I was even shocked from like Peru. The cultural differences between here and Peru, even though it's only 2 hours time difference, are pretty radical. There's going to be cultural stress. It's just the reality is going to set in. Circumstances that were quaint are now seen as very weird or even barbaric. You're like, I can't believe they do that. The temptation is to kind of judge the culture. You're like, man, that's so stupid that they do that. I mean, I can't believe they ignore people like that, or I can't believe that's how they do it. And what I tell missionaries is, as far as I know, no one's asked you to give your opinion about their culture. That's not why you're there. You're not there to be a critic of their culture. No one's asking you to fix their culture. They're not. But you're bringing Jesus to their culture, and changed hearts equals changed lives, which ultimately changes culture. So you're about to be changed. You're about to be changing lives. That's what you're to be about. Okay, so all the adventure of discovery turns into what now? What next? Almost like brace for it. What's going to come next? What weird thing? You're going to have trials. Your first trial is really kind of set in. You're going to have resistance to maybe what you're doing. I didn't think I'd be opposed this way, and I tried to rent this place, and they charged me double the rent what anyone else that lives here would pay just because I'm American. Oh man, so you start facing some resistance. You're going, why is God doing this to me? Why did he send me here if I was going to have this kind of resistance? Now, most missionaries tend to kind of stuff these feelings. They might be feeling these things, but they don't tell anyone. You know why they don't tell anyone? Why do you think they don't tell anyone? Any guess? You're frustrated about where you are. Why would you not tell anyone?
You went there?
Yeah, you might feel unspiritual. You don't want people to start questioning why you're there, like what maybe I made a mistake, right? And so if you're maybe honest about your struggles, you're afraid that people are going to judge you for it or think that you're unspiritual, or maybe just say, maybe you just need to man up or woman up, right? I think, we're afraid of kind of being vulnerable that way and letting people know that I'm having a hard time. Okay, I'm not for, just a side note, I don't really kind of dig the complaining newsletters. Like, life is so hard, it's such a hard time today, this week, I'm not really into that. I'm not saying that you need to pretend that all is hunky-dory all the time, but if your newsletter, if I open your newsletter each week or each month and I see like this big downer every time, why am I supporting this, after a while? I'm not saying that you cover over and you pretend everything's good. I think it's good to put your real struggles in there. But you need to be able to come around and say, hey, but I know God's in control. Pray for me. I know God's going to work it out. Let's see what God does. You should be able to end somewhere in that area. Okay, how do you get there? Well, that's where others need to get involved. This is where the cross-cultural team helps you through this. Okay, so they help you. Cameron, I want you to call me. And hey, let's Skype. I know you're having a hard time. Cameron, let's Skype. Let's have a talk, over, tomorrow, set up time. And hey, let's just talk this through. I'll pray with you. I'll get a couple others to pray as well. We'll get through this together. That's where the team comes in. I want you to be real. I want you to be honest. I would be shocked if you didn't have struggles because I kind of know. Now, can everyone on your newsletter list handle your struggles or handle the idea of you having those type of struggles? Maybe not. But your team or your more core team should be able to. And you need to be able to be real, process some of those feelings, be able to talk it through. Sometimes it's really refreshing just to talk it through and you know that someone on the other side is going to say, hey, look, I'm going to pray for you. You can do this. I think part of our role, honestly, is supporting those that go out. So you have a friend that goes out. Part of your role is don't let them throw in the towel. God has called you. I believe it. He's confirmed it. Hang in there. He's going to give you what you need. Don't let them throw in the towel because they're going to hit a moment of insecurity or regret, and that's where they need you to actually be strong and not kind of say, oh, you're having a hard time? Okay, you want to come back? Okay, you can come back. Okay. That's not what they need. Now, they do need a sympathetic ear. Let me be clear. Like, I think they need to hear that, man, I understand. That sounds rough. Man, let's talk about this. Tell me more. Ask good questions, be a good listener, be sympathetic. For the end, you need to be able to, hey man, I know God's called you. I'll even send, sometimes I know a missionary is really discouraged, I'll send some verses kind of the next few days. Hey, God's going to work this out. Hey, check out this verse. God gave me this verse for you. That's really encouraging. So, I'm not just blowing them off by any means, but at the same time, I'm not kind of coddling either and kind of going, oh, you're having a hard time. Okay, come on back off the mission field. Because that isn't helpful either. Their flesh might like that, but really their spirit doesn't want that. Their spirit needs you to say, you can do this. I remember when I was in Campus Crusade for Christ and I was a leader for Campus Crusade, and I wanted to throw in the towel. I was done. I just had a rough couple weeks. I was coordinating MC. Things didn't go as I thought they should. I got some kind of rough feedback that came, other leaders that kind of came back through the grapevine. They were kind of critical of what I did. And not to say I didn't deserve some criticism, I probably really did. But I was ready to throw in the towel. So I remember talking to the leader and going, I'm done. I am done. I showed up, on a Saturday morning and doorstep, I'm like, done. And I remember, brought me in, sat me down, prayed for me, talked it through. And at the end of the day, he's like, no, you're not done. I'm not letting you resign. You're not going down this way. Next week, almost like next week, get back in there. Okay, I'll see you next week. I was like, I came here to resign, and I'm walking out of here feeling encouraged and ready to take on next week. What happened? He didn't let me resign. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Really. But it was a 2-hour, maybe probably closer to a 3-hour process, right? To kind of get me around. It isn't like a quick fix. There aren't quick fixes on the mission field. but you just need to go, hey, I'll pray for you. And I try to resist. For me, I'm a fixer. That's what I do. I can analyze situations usually pretty quick. I feel like I have a decent gift to be able to see the problem and be able to have some decent solutions. Like, hey, let's try this. Let's try this. Us guys tend to be a little quick on the fix it mode. It's kind of what we do. We kind of tend to be able. My wife would be like, "Don't fix it." She needs me to just be there for her, right? There's something kind of similar, I think, is that, hey, look, I need to withhold trying to fix it, and I need to be quicker at being a listening ear, hearing him out. Trying to fix it can be, could even be a time frame. Could be, hey, in an hour or for 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Just then, once this person knows that, hey, I'm on board with you, I'm there for you, then we can start trying to troubleshoot. So that's the way I try to work it. Does that make sense? So look, we all need encouragement to stay the course. But there's a fork in the road. So reality sets in, honeymoon's over. You'll notice there's a choice. What are the choices? You push through or you come back. And early on, this is kind of how it works. Now look, I'm not saying if there's legitimate health issues, which we've had someone just has major health issues that really just flared up, go, maybe this isn't the right place. We don't want this person just to totally suffer in their health to even kind of take a deeper dive. There can be reasons to come back that are totally legit. Someone's family member, close family member dies, and man, it really shook up the family, and I need to come back for a short period. Okay, well, God knew this all would happen. Maybe there's time and place for those, to make some exceptions. For the most part, I try to encourage missionaries to push through. We got you this far. I believe God is going to get you through it. His calling hasn't changed. Let's work through this. So the key is having a team help you through it. And maybe look, if someone's really desperate, I would really even consider flying over there and hang with them for a little bit. If I had to, I totally would. Usually with today's technology, you don't really need to do that as much because you can Skype, which really changes things. That changed missions, seriously, to be able to talk to someone in Russia in real time when they're getting ready to go to bed and I'm just getting up in the morning kind of thing. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so they need to be encouraged to stay the course. Then what happens? Okay, so you have your culture of stress, you work through it. Then what happens after that? They push through, and you call it ministry of love, meaning they found their calling. They figured out what their role is. Not that it's perfect, and look, if you look at this, it's not like there's no bumps in the road. I mean, obviously we put kind of a flat line there. It has its ups and downs. But you can see what's interesting about this is that you thought you're going to live on this kind of level of, it's always going to be so great all the time. Well, that was the honeymoon. Reality sets in, you push through at this level, and you have real productive ministry of love that's fruitful. God is using you, and you have a successful season. It used to be that missionaries would spend a lifetime, or, if you came back after 10 years, I was like, what are you doing back? Today's mindset tends to be a little more like, yeah, I'm going to go try that for a couple of years, come back. I'm not opposed to that. It's just a different mindset than it used to be. It used to be like, you burn the boat when you go kind of concept. And I've even heard of that happening. Like, he wanted his team, I forgot who it was, but actually burned the boat.
Alexander the Great?
Alexander, yeah, where he burned his boats because he didn't want the soldiers to think they had a way out, a way of escape. Yeah, which is, I would recommend in ministry. You have your ministry of love, your clear vision is regained, you got your focus back, God is opening up doors. But look, it's not without its issues. In 1 Corinthians 16, Paul says, a great and effective door has been opened to me, but I have many adversaries. So there's a door, or doors you could say, that have opened to you, but you're going to have some opposition. But that didn't scare away Paul, and he doesn't want to scare us away either. You push through that. Because you have opposition, again, probably means that you're on the right track. You don't want Satan patting you on the back and saying, hey, you're doing just fine. So if you're getting some resistance, you're probably a threat to something that he holds dear. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. Not that I go looking for opposition. Yes, opposition. But ultimately, it can be an indicator. If I get absolutely no opposition, I might get a little concerned. Like, are you really kind of taking on the enemy's territory at this point? So you push through, you see God do it. What do nationals want to know? They want to know that you love them. That's why we call it ministry of love. Nationals want to know that you love them. What are the questions that people have? Do you love us? Do you really care for us? Would you miss me if you weren't here or if I wasn't here? Is this a job or do you really feel called to this? They want to know, are you just fulfilling a job or are you really here because you love us and you want to be here? Okay, so that's the ministry of love. Okay, and then you can see there's an endpoint for most missionaries. Now, one of the missionary biographies, there's a couple missionaries that ended up dying on the mission field. That's really rare, but it can happen. Especially in today's age, I think it's even more rare because it's easier to travel back and forth. You can get a plane ticket and be back pretty much the same day, anywhere in the world, or at least within 30 hours. So when you head toward the date of return, that causes its own issues. So the next one is anticipation of return, which should be right here. You're nearing time of coming back. You set the date. Oh man, in 3 months we're coming home. Did you get that? Anticipation of return? That causes its own anxiety, right? Just the idea of coming home. Why does coming home create its own anxieties? Why?
Stories about America, and it's like kind of scary.
To come back?
Yeah, like you just hear sometimes if you're coming from a rather safe place in the world. I know for my parents it was really scary hearing all about like malls and like all the stuff that was happening at schools, and then just combined with a lot of change.
Change, yeah. That's a big one. Yeah, is that like things changed. And okay, here's what I'd say. 2 things have changed. The culture you left had changed. Think about missionaries been gone for 20 years. They leave during maybe like the Clinton years or whatever, and they come back and like, is Trump and Clinton again? That could be stressful right there, right? Like, what is going on with our country? Clinton, is Trump and Hillary. I mean, what is going on? If that doesn't cause stress, I don't know what would. But just things change, right? My grandmother passed and I wasn't able to come back, and I didn't get to really kind of mourn her passing. I come back 2 years later and it's like, oh, they sold her house, The favorite restaurant I used to go to is now a shopping mall or a freeway, right? You don't think about those things, but the culture's changed. My hometown, my family sold that house and they moved on, and it's not the same anymore and whatever. Things that you used to know, friendships you used to have, people have kind of moved on. Maybe you haven't been in touch with certain people. And the bigger thing is not just the culture you left has changed, say America. What else has changed? You've changed. God has changed you. You have a different perspective on life. You probably have a different value system. You have different goals. You see the world differently. People that are on the mission field, they see things kind of through a different not worldly as in a negative way, but the kind of a worldwide lens, kind of see things with bigger perspective. We tend to see things through American lens, you could say, or American perspective. How does it impact America? When you're out in the world, you're no longer concerned as much about America. It's more about what's God doing in the world. So all that together, it just causes stress. One guy I talked to, he said, my pastor, I come back off the mission field, and the pastor of my sending church, I don't really connect with him. He's a new pastor, and they don't really care about missions the way the old pastor did. That would be stressful right there, right? This was my support base, and they're no longer really like connected with me. And the pastor gave me 15 minutes after for a coffee appointment, and he canceled that. And what do I do? And it's weird. And I talked to one guy who goes, yeah, I talked to my pastor, and he actually discouraged me from going to the mission field. Now, sometimes I understand. Sometimes pastors try to slow someone down on purpose. Like, I'm not saying, but I don't think that was the case. I think it was actually like he'd just rather not go and stay here. So and serve at the church, which is cool, I guess. But it's discerning or disconcerting, you could say, for the missionary. Okay, so anticipation of return. Okay, so you have some kind of turbulence there and kind of going back. What's life going to be back when they go? You can see right here in H, you have cultural stress in reverse. So cultural stress on the front end, going into after the honeymoon, right? And you go into the ministry of love. Well, you have cultural stress in reverse coming back into the States as you try to get acclimated, Lord willingly, back into ministry here. Unless you're called back into another ministry in the missions. But either way, you should be engaged now in ministry somewhere. So if it's not in the mission field, it should be back here. You know, we're sending church, come back to Santa Barbara. I'd want you to, Drew, you come back. Okay, great. Let's get you, let's give you some kind of time to recover, debrief, get things settled, but let's get you back into ministry right here. There's a lot of things you could be doing. It could be really beneficial. Things you learn can be an asset to what we do here. Okay, so there's cultural stress in reverse hitting the ground back here, right? And some of the things we just talked about. Think about the changes too. You could just have dietary issues. The weather patterns are just different. The culture is just different. America is such a fast-paced culture. When we're in Peru, no one will bring the check to your table. Why? Why is the waiter not going to bring the check to your table? And like here in America, it's like you're done eating. They're like, can I take your plates? Can I take your plates? Right? Why? Why do they do that? Why does America want to clear your table and get you the check?
They want you out. They want to make money. Fast-paced.
Next, let's get the next one in. Why would they not do that in, say, another country like Peru? What do you think?
Disrespectful?
Disrespectful? They're respecting something here. What do they appreciate when you're, say, with a group of people and you're at a table? What do they want you to do?
Talk.
Yeah, it's about relationship. They say, you know what? Your meal is not about a meal, it's about a relationship or about relationships. And I want you to have as much time as possible. Meals are about relationships in most of the world, especially developing cultures, and definitely what we would call shame and honor cultures, which is a lot of the Middle East and a lot of the 1040 window is a shame and honor culture, meaning it's about relationships. Last thing you want to do is upset the balance, and you want community approval. You don't want to be shamed. You want to honor those in your family, in your community. So it's a big deal. It's all about relationship, and food tends to be about relationship. For Americans, food is about pleasing my gut, really. And I want it to be fast. That's why we have McDonald's, right? And so it's all about bam, bam, bam. So it's totally different. So you come back, you have a lot of trauma kind of going on. A lot of them feel lost coming home. You would think these guys are like legend where they were, and they come back and they feel kind of lost. Like they knew where they fit in this country, come back to the States, and they're like, where do I fit in? Man, people I used to know, I don't have everyone's phone numbers even. I don't even know how, it's like I'm not connected. I don't even know the new ministries that are going on in the church. I don't understand the priorities that are going on around here. Oh man, how's it, this grocery store, one I liked, moved, you get the idea. And you've changed, so you have a spiritual depth to you. Now this is important. I talk to missionaries that come back, and one thing I talk to them when they come back is you got to really work on trying not to be judgmental of Christians in the church in America. You're going to want to be. What I mean by this is you come back and they go, man, Christians are so materialistic. They have the wrong priorities in how they use time, use energy, just kind of shallow and kind of the understanding and just how God works in the world, maybe shallow in their, even Bible knowledge and all that, right? It's easy to be judgmental when missionaries come back. Because, why? They've been changed. God has used that mission field to grow them spiritually leaps and bounds. So they are spiritually fit. It's like they've been through spiritual CrossFit. They've been through cross training. Hey, they are if spiritually you could look at them, they might look normal, but spiritually you could get a glimpse, their muscles are like here because they've been really stretched spiritually. They've grown. That's how we grow spiritually is you're stretched. You're put into, trying situations, out of your comfort zone. You have to trust the Lord. You grow in your faith. And then you have more faith to trust the Lord for something next because you saw that he was faithful here, right? That's the way it works. So you come back spiritually fit, fine-tuned. You look around you and go, you're looking a little spiritually pudgy. You're looking a little anemic. You're looking a little, and you can be a little judging. And being kind of like, church doesn't get it. I try to share my story with some people, and within a half hour, they start tuning out and looking at their phone. That could be pretty disheartening for a missionary. Okay, so what do I do? How do I help a missionary come back? What do I do for them? What do you think? How do I help them in this transition? Okay. Listen to them. Let them talk. Let them talk as long as they stinking want to talk. Okay, if you actually run out of time, then let's do this again and make sure you do. I think they just need a debrief, honestly. I think they need to be able to bounce things off. I think they need to cry about not being able to go visit go to their grandmother's funeral, or their house got demolished or whatever. I think they need to kind of mourn those things. I think they need to process things. I think they need to work through it, and they need friends to be able to kind of be there for them. You can't make them, kind of do all that, but at least you can try to be there for them, be a listening ear, and actually have time for them. Because in the culture they're at, most likely, people had time for them. You come here, and no one's got time for me. I had to schedule an appointment for my pastor 2 months out because he doesn't have time. That kind of stuff. I'm just kind of joking. But there is some truth to it, right? Is that, well, I'll schedule it next week if I can, It's just, we live in kind of that culture. It's just different. I tell missionaries, hey, look, you got to really work on not being judgmental. Here's why. I want you can share your story with people, but don't expect our sharing of what you did and what God did in this country is going to change their life right then. Why? How long did it take for God to give you this perspective that you now have? How long did it take? Years, right? God used you on the mission field, and he took a long time for it to change you. You weren't changed overnight. What makes you think that you can change others in an hour meeting with them or sharing at a dessert function or something? Right? That's not realistic. It took a long time for God to work those things into you. It'll take a process. Now, maybe God wants to use you to help others, to kind of wake up to certain things. Maybe he can use you to bring awareness, but it's not going to be a quick thing of having coffee with someone at Starbucks and all of a sudden they're radically changed and different, right? So you got to be able to have that perspective too. Try not to be judgmental of the church, but you can be helpful in helping the church be more aware and wake up to certain things. And I'd say, hey, if you want to see the church change, be an agent of change, but have patience. Get involved. Get back into the fabric of the church. And we need to find good entry points for someone. You don't drop them into everything right away. You let them kind of ease into certain ministries, kind of entry level, and then they kind of take them more as they go because they got this adjustment they got to take place. So that's cultural stress in reverse. And then the last one, see there is, would be full integration. Down at the bottom, you got full integration where they basically integrate into the church. This would be similar to the ministry of love, is that when they're mission field, they kind of enter into this level of doing ministry. They're being used of God. It's being fruitful. Well, they integrate back into the life of the church. They're back in the community. They're being used. And so it's a win-win. Look, I think missionaries have a lot to bring to the table. Because I think they do have a different perspective on things. So, man, I want to get them back into ministry right away. Be honest, some haven't made it back into ministry for one reason or another, and, there's a lot of stress that kind of goes with it. Sometimes, people view missionaries almost like they have a halo on their head, like they're perfect, they're like otherworldly, and there's just something like, I can never be like them, like a missionary. And they're like, what? I have weaknesses, and I mess up just like you. I was just one to kind of go, and I was kind of crazy that way. And, they don't see themselves necessarily as being much different, but the church can kind of be like, wow, and not really even know how to approach them sometimes. So it's something that I think we need grace on both sides. I think the church needs to be able to embrace missionaries who come back, and I think missionaries need to be aware of not trying to dump everything they learned from the last 10 years of ministry on people the first moment they come back and being judgmental. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's ultimately the goal. You want them to be productive. Look, missionaries are great at rallying other new missionaries. That's what they're good at. Put them to work. Get them involved. I want them to be able to apply what they learn on the field and be able to bring it here and put it into action. That'd be the goal. So, Any questions on that? Any thoughts? It's funny, I've learned how to work with missionaries over the years by mistakes. That's usually how you learn ministry, right? Is that you can either learn from other people's mistakes or you learn from your own mistakes. And so I learned from my own mistakes. One of them is, this is toy sidebar. I remember going to the bank with a missionary and I was taking out money, a lot of money, in order to pay for meals and things. And I remember I should never do this in front of a missionary again because the missionary sees me taking out $100 bills out of the bank, getting change. And he's looking at it going, this could feed my orphanage for a month, just a couple of those bills, right? And we're going to go blow it on Pizza Hut in one night, and probably go get ice cream afterwards. And I just realized that there's such a cultural gap between how we use money and how they use money, even in their country. And he's going, I could have taken this to the market and, for what you got those pizzas for, I could have got, rice and beans and some chickens for like the whole, 3 weeks. And, it's just funny, but you kind of learn, I got to be sensitive of how they view things. They view things differently than I do now. And if I were in this person's shoes, I were in this country, say Thailand, for the last 15 years, I would probably have the same view of this, this missions pastor coming from, or youth pastor coming from America. And so I've learned try to be more sensitive and kind of how I do things, how to do business, even that. When you go on short-term trips, I think you just want to be aware of that. I think there's a lot of grace that's given. He would never, this missionary was so great, he would never say anything. But you just got the sense, right? You just could tell, like, ooh, this is not good. I shouldn't do this. You just kind of learn, that, hey, look, I want to be sensitive to where they're coming from as well.